You see that big block of squiggles on the cover of Legion down there? That's supposed to be the title written in English, though I think someone has to tell you what it's supposed to be before you can see it. Legion is our latest CD-ROM game from Nihon Telenet, the game company that loves to collect different names. You'll note that this time, on the cover, they're called Renovation, and that's the name that they use for publishing a lot of their works in the US. They had been releasing CD games under the Lasersoft label, and that isn't quite dead yet, but for the most part, we'll be seeing them as Renovation from now on. As far as I can tell, this is the first time that the Renovation name was used, and honestly, after Legion, it's a little bit surprising that they didn't abandon it. The thing about Legion is that it is an infamous game. One of those games that's in contention for worst game on the PC Engine. Now I think that even by this point I've played worse, but if you sit down and try to play it, it won't be long before you understand why it's so despised. The plot is given to you in narration that occurs at the start of every stage, and if you pause the game during that narration, it just keeps playing, so you can let it conclude before you unpause the game and actually play. The gist of it is that you're the pilot of a lone space fighter sent to attack the desert planet, but once you conclude that attack, the enemy forces go all out in attacking the Empire, so you go and attack their homeworld. For some reason, the Empire is the good guy. And if you thought I sounded bored while recounting the plot, I was just doing my impression of the actor reading the monologue.
In accordance with my orders from the mother ship, I have arrived at the appointed point at 1990 hours space-time. The Cave Planet, checkpoint on the way to the desert planet, suddenly becomes eerily silent, and I can see only the shadow of the enemy ship. They seem to be busy partying and not to have noticed my presence. Well, sorry guys, but I think I'll just let you tire yourselves out dancing.
Yes, all of that speech is in English, even though the game was only released in Japan. I have to point out one more thing before I really get into the game, and there's a good chance that some of you have already noticed. The game audio for Legion is broken. The PC Engine CD-ROM unit offers stereo sound, and Legion's audio only comes over the left channel. I thought I had accidentally unplugged one of my speakers, but then I checked the tracks, and no, most of the audio is just isolated there. The voice samples and boss music play from the CD, and so those are actually in stereo, but other audio just comes out the left-hand side. Legion is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up that takes place across 6 or 7 stages. There's branching paths, and one of them has an extra stage in it. So you'll start playing the first stage, and then this happens. Well, I'm sure that was nothing. Probably not used to the game yet. We'll just play for a... Okay, twice might be a coincidence still. Let's just keep trying for a bit longer. Alright, what you're seeing is the first problem with Legion. It is insanely difficult. And not in a, oh, I can learn this and overcome it kind of way. I mean, you will have to memorize the stages to make any progress, but this game is often unfair. You'll notice that the very first enemy pattern that you encounter are guys who come in at an awkward angle, shoot past you, turn around, and then fire at you twice. Bullets travel faster than your ship moves, so unless you are already dodging, you're dead. Same thing for the rocks that suddenly drop from the ceiling, and of course turrets shoot those same high-speed bullets that are nearly impossible to dodge. The weird thing is, Stage 1 of Legion is one of the harder stages in the game. Some of the stages are almost trivial to beat. It's like they had 2 different kinds of levels. Impossibly broken, and so easy you could sleepwalk through them. To make up for that brutal difficulty, you're given 5 lives to start with. And of course, touching anything kills you instantly. That includes the terrain, which is a bigger problem than it seems, because the hitbox for the terrain is a lot larger than the visual depiction of the terrain. Naturally, many stages take place in cramped quarters. The perfect environment for that. When you revive, you're invincible for a few seconds, but when you're invincible, you can't pick up any power-ups. So anything that was on screen when you revived is gone. When you run out of lives, you can continue and pick up right where you left off. However, the game keeps scrolling, and the continue is on a 10-second timer. So most people recommend just waiting until the timer runs out. Revive yourself at the last moment, and skip playing most of the game. This doesn't work on bosses, but on the impossible stages you can make a lot of progress this way. By the way, you don't press start to continue, you have to press button 1. That's different from the interface in the rest of the game. Power-ups come in being carried by 2 ships, and you have to shoot them down before you can collect it. The C power-up determines what weapon you're using. It will rotate through 3 different colors. Which color you collect determines what weapon you get. Blue is for homing missiles, green is the spread shot, and red is for Valken. Oops, sorry, that was a mistake. Not the Valken part, you can see the text at the top of the screen, but the color of the weapons. I was reading from the manual. When you play the game, red is the spread shot, and green is the Valken. Collecting a P icon will increase the power of that weapon, and there are 5 levels for each of them. The Valken is the default weapon, just a straight shot forward, and as it powers up, you'll get twin shots that are identical to the original shot, and then it'll become a laser, which is identical to the original shot. Doesn't even penetrate anything. So that's pretty much the worst option to have, except you're always going to have it because you're constantly dying. The wide shot is always a spread in front of you, and every time you collect a power-up, you get 1 more bullet. It caps out at a 6-way spread in front of you. Weirdly, because everything moves faster than you can shoot, the homing missiles wind up being weirdly effective. Usually in shoot-'em-ups, homing missiles are a crutch that doesn't work as well as the regular weapons. But here its only weakness is that you can't fire again until all of the missiles are gone. Powering up the homing missiles gets you 1 more missile. There's also the M icon that you can collect that will let you drop bombs, except it doesn't work when you have the homing missile weapon. B is for barrier, and that will let you take a few shots, though you'll still die if you run into terrain. And O is for option. Now you might have noticed something odd after I collected that O. There are no options. That's the generic term for any kind of little pod that follows your ship around and fires. The voice clearly says option, but you don't have any. I think it actually adds 1 more bomb to your stock, though it's hard to tell because there's no indicator on screen of how many bombs you have. You fire a bomb in Legion by pressing button 1, and it'll destroy all enemies on the screen. It also corrects several bugs in the game. Yes, really. There's some places where you can't fire your main gun with button 2 until you've launched a bomb by pressing button 1. And on one of the stages, the boss doesn't appear unless you fire a bomb. There's a line in the manual that tells you to do this, but there's no indication on screen. No enemies to destroy, no barrier that has to be blown up. You just sit on a screen with a repeating background until you press button 1. Of course, if you don't have any bombs, then you can sit there forever. So obviously, Legion is a very bad game, and even at the time of its release, people knew it. It's maintained its reputation in Japan as one of the worst PC Engine shooters. Even its developers at Nihon Telenet noted it as one of the signs of the decline of the company. And yet, after 35 years of quietly covering it up and hoping everyone would forget that Legion exists, as of the time of this recording, Legion has just been reissued as part of the Telenet Milestones Collection 2, which means that by the time this video goes up, a physical version will probably be available for pre-order from certain online retailers. It'll be very easy to experience this one yourself. Of course, I don't recommend doing that. I might think that Deep Blue is a worse shooter than Legion, but it's a close call. Legion managed to find whole new ways of being bad, and you really don't need to experience that.